Imagine waking up in a world where the echoes of laughter from a backyard barbecue with your closest brothers fade into silence, replaced by the hollow hum of solitude. What if I told you that this isn't some dystopian nightmare, but the engineered reality men face today? A deliberate unraveling of spaces where we could once build unbreakable bonds. In the next hour, we'll unpack the quiet revolution of men walking away from the ashes of lost brotherhoods to the dawn of unapologetic self reliance. And by the end, you'll see why this path isn't defeat, but the ultimate reclamation of power that could reshape everything you thought you knew about strength. If you're fired up by this already and crave more no holds barred insights from the angry guy perspective, do me a solid. Smash that like button, share this with a brother who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you never miss a beat on reclaiming what's yours. Before we dive deeper, let's talk about something that's revolutionizing how smart men protect and build their futures. Head over to Angry's Crypto Academy. It's your gateway to mastering the world of cryptocurrency. Whether you're just starting out or looking to level up, you'll learn proven strategies to safeguard your assets, grow your wealth steadily, and navigate buying, selling, and trading with confidence. The link is right there in the description. So pause this right now, click through, and take that first step toward financial independence that no one can take away from you. Picture this: it's a crisp autumn evening in a small town, the kind where leaves crunch underfoot like whispered secrets. A group of guys, maybe five or six, gather in a dimly lit garage, not for some grand scheme, but simply to shoot the breeze over cold beers and a half finished poker game. The air is thick with that easy camaraderie, the sort that doesn't need words to affirm you're not alone in this chaotic world. Stories flow like the smoke from their cigars, tales of workplace battles won, family milestones celebrated, and the occasional gripe about life's curveballs. In that moment, they aren't just friends. They're a fortress, a brotherhood forged in the unpolished fire of shared experiences. But what happens when that garage door slams shut for the last time? When the invitations dry up and the group chat goes silent? That's the story of so many men today, a narrative that's been scripted not by fate, but by a society that's methodically chipped away at the very foundations of male connection. We're not talking about dramatic betrayals or sudden feuds here. No, this erosion is subtler, more insidious, a slow bleed that leaves men adrift in a sea of isolation, men walking away, or MWA as it's come to be known in the circles that matter, isn't just a catchy phrase or a fleeting trend. It's a profound shift, a collective exhale after decades of holding our breath in spaces that were never truly ours anymore. And it starts, as these things often do, with the loss of what should have been sacred ground. The male only havens, where boys become men, where vulnerabilities are aired without judgment, and where the raw essence of masculinity isn't just tolerated, it's celebrated. And let me take you back a bit to paint this picture with the strokes it deserves. Rewind to the early days of scouting, say the 1960s or 70s, when the Boy Scouts weren't just an organization, they were a rite of passage. Imagine a young kid, all gangly limbs and boundless energy, tying his first knot under the watchful eye of a grizzled troop leader. The campfires crackle with songs that are equal parts silly and soul stirring, ghost stories that send shivers down spines, and merit badges earned through mud caked hikes that test not just the body, but the spirit. It's here, amid the tangle of ropes and the glow of embers, that boys learn the value of trust. Trust in their gear, in their peers, in themselves. These weren't frivolous games. They were the building blocks of resilience, the quiet lessons in leadership that no classroom could impart. Fast forward a few decades, And what do we see? The organization that once stood as a beacon for male mentorship now opens its ranks to everyone, diluting the unique alchemy of boy to man transformation. Girls join, and suddenly the dynamics shift, not out of malice, but out of an inevitable recalibration that strips away the unfiltered bonding boys crave. It's like inviting spectators to a huddle. The plays get whispered, the energy fractures. This isn't an isolated incident, mind you. It's the opening act in a broader symphony of displacement. Think about the neighborhood sports leagues of yore, those dusty fields where dads coached with a mix of tough love and quiet pride. Boys would clash on the gridiron or the diamond, bruises blooming like badges of honor, only to collapse in a heap afterward, laughing through the ache. The post game rituals, grabbing sodas from the cooler, dissecting every fumble and fastball, those were the glue. They wove threads of loyalty that lasted lifetimes. But today, those fields are co ed battlegrounds where the line between competition and caution blurs. Coaches tiptoe around toxic behaviors like roughhousing or trash talking lest they offend. The boys, sensing the shift, pull back, not because they're fragile, but because the space no longer feels like a proving ground. It's safer, sure, but safety in this context comes at the cost of authenticity. The very friction that forges steel is sanded smooth, leaving us with polished but brittle edges. And let's not gloss over the gyms, those sanctuaries of sweat and iron that once roared with the primal symphony of clanging plates and grunted encouragements. I remember stepping into one back in my 20s, a no frills spot with peeling paint and mirrors fogged from exertion. It was a cathedral for the uninitiated, where grizzled lifters spotted newcomers on bench presses, offering gruff wisdom between sets. Keep your core tight, kid. Life's going to throw heavier weights at you. No judgments on form or fury, just men pushing the limits side by side, the air electric with unspoken solidarity. Women weren't barred out of hatred. It was about preserving a zone where vulnerability and pursuit of strength could unfold without the gaze of the opposite sex complicating the rawness. Enter the modern era, and those gyms? They're hybrid havens now, yoga mats unfurled next to squat racks, playlists shifting from metal anthems to pop remixes. Progress, they call it, inclusion. But for many men, it's a quiet exile. The spots where we could roar without restraint, where a failed lift was met with a slap on the back instead of a sympathetic nod, they're gone. Replaced by apps and home setups where the mirror reflects only you, staring back in solitary judgment. Colleges and universities, pillars of higher learning, followed suit in this grand redesign. Envision the dorms of the mid 20th century, rowdy houses teeming with all male energy, late night debates over philosophy, and cheap whiskey raging until dawn. Pranks that bordered on chaos, study sessions that devolved into life coaching marathons. These were incubators for intellect and irreverence. Fraternities weren't perfect, heaven knows, but they were crucibles where young men hammered out their identities amid the din of brotherhood. Hazing rituals, flawed as they were, built hierarchies of trust, philanthropy drives, instilled purpose. Now, single sex housing is a relic, eyed with suspicion in the name of equity. Co ed everything means diluted everything. The unfiltered banter gives way to performative politeness, the wild escapades to curated events. Men retreat to their laptops, curating online personas that approximate the connection they once had in flesh and blood. It's efficient, perhaps, but it starves the soul of the tactile, the immediate, the irreplaceable spark of face to face forging. Even bars, the bars, those oaken havens where shift workers unwound after grueling days, swapping war stories over pints that tasted of hard earned respite. Picture a corner pub in a working class district, neon signs flickering like fireflies. The bartender, a surrogate uncle, pouring wisdom with the foam. Men from all walks, plumbers, professors, dreamers derailed, clustered around scarred tables, dissecting the day's absurdities with a humor honed sharp by adversity. Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now. It wasn't about excess, it was about equilibrium, a pressure valve for the relentless grind. Women only lounges persist in pockets, safe spaces for unbridled sisterhood, but try launching a male only counterpart today. The backlash would be swift. Accusations of exclusion, toxicity, irrelevance. So the doors stay open to all, and the conversations, they fragment. The guy nursing a regret over a lost job tempers his tale, aware of the ears around him. The depth that once flowed freely now trickles, cautious and contained. Sports clubs, those bastions of ritual and rivalry, haven't escaped the tide. Golf courses that echoed with the crack of drivers and the easy ribbing of mulligans, male enclaves where deals were sealed over birdies and bogeys, boxing gyms where gloves thudded like thunder, mentors barking form corrections that doubled as life lessons. These weren't escapes from women, they were escapes into self, amplified by the chorus of shared pursuit. Yet one by one, they've integrated, rebranded, reformed. Toxic masculinity becomes the refrain, sung by those who've never felt the sting of a sparring session or the camaraderie of a fairway foursome. Men sensing the chill slip away, not in protest, but in preservation. Why fight for a seat at a table that's reshaping itself to exclude your full voice? Jails and prisons stand as the stark exceptions, grim ironies in this landscape. There, in the unyielding grip of confinement, male only spaces endure, not by choice, but by cruel necessity. Brotherhoods form in the shadows, forged in survival's crucible, where vulnerability meets violence in a dance as old as time. But who envies that? It's a perversion of what we're mourning, connection stripped to its barest, most brutal essence. Society's blind spot, perhaps, but a telling one. Everywhere else, the message is clear: surrender your sanctuaries or be branded the villain. This invasion wasn't haphazard, it was a campaign, cloaked in the noble garb of equality. Women entered these realms not always with pitchforks, but with petitions and policies that labeled the air itself poisonous. Toxic, they declared, the boisterous chants, the competitive fire, the unscripted affections between brothers. What was once the natural pulse of masculinity became pathology, a symptom to be medicated. Men, caught off guard, didn't revolt en masse. We adapted as men do. We yielded ground, hoping for harmony, only to find our footprints erased. The spaces we cherished morphed into hybrids, welcoming all but belonging to none. Natural expressions, the shoulder punch of congratulations, the locker room roast that builds rather than breaks, were recast as relics, frowned upon by the new overseers. And in their wake, an exodus, quiet but seismic. Men retreated, not in defeat, but in strategic withdrawal, into homes that echo with silence, into solitude that whispers of self sufficiency. Most men today, they navigate a friendless frontier. Statistics bear this out, though numbers can't capture the ache. Surveys reveal that nearly half of men under 30 report having no close confidants, a figure that climbs with age. It's not laziness or emotional stunting. It's the residue of a system that prized division over unity. Orchestrated? Absolutely. By design, woven into the fabric of a society that saw to strength in scattering us. Women and the cultural machinery at large wagered that isolated men, atoms bouncing in the void, would be pliable, easier to steer toward prescribed roles. Provider, protector, but never peer. Divide and conquer, the oldest playbook, dusted off for the digital age. They banked on compliance, on men folding into the script. But men, we're the original adapters, the species that tamed fire and felled forests. What they didn't anticipate was the alchemy of absence. From the rubble of raised spaces, we alchemized alternatives. Enter the manosphere, that sprawling digital republic where pixels replace pints and anonymity shields authenticity. Forums thrum with threads that dissect the day's indignities. Podcasts pulse with voices unbowed, comparing scars like veterans at a VFW hall. It's not polished, far from it, but it's pure. Men log in after long shifts, not seeking pity, but parody. Here's what happened to me, one posts, and a chorus rises. Same here. Here's how I navigated it. Notes compared, patterns revealed, wisdom distilled. What society tore asunder, the internet stitched anew, thread by tenuous thread. This digital diaspora birthed movements that echo through the ether, men going their own way, a vanguard of voluntary detachment, charting courses untethered to expectation. And from its loins sprang MWA, men walking away. The evolution that says not just enough, but watch me thrive without you. It's a manifesto in motion, a refusal etched in every unfollowed feed, every solo hike at dawn. Women and their societal amplifiers thought fragmentation would foster control, like molding wet clay. Instead, they've sown silica. Men as grains of sand slipping through fingers no matter how tightly clenched. You can't corral the uncorrallable. You can't command what chooses freedom. Men aren't adrift in this. We're architects. The label lonely is a misfit garment tailored by observers who mistake quiet for defeat. No, we're mastering the art of alone, savoring the symmetry of a morning coffee unshared, the unhurried rhythm of a book by lamplight. Peace isn't passive, it's a prize, hard won through the gauntlet of ghosted gatherings and faded flags. We've learned its contours, the way solitude amplifies ambition, turning inward whispers into outward empires. A man alone isn't incomplete. He's undiluted, his energy no longer leaked into leaky vessels. The scars run deep, though, and healing? That's a horizon mirage for our era. The chasm women carved through policy, through protest, through the slow poison of preconditioned disdain spans generations. Repair it in our lifetimes? Unlikely. It demands a collective pivot from the fairer sex, a reckoning with the rubble they've romanticized as progress. But modern women, steeped in the elixir of entitlement, view men not as partners, but as props in their narrative. Service is the expectation, reciprocity, a relic. Feminism, once a torch for equity, twisted into a bludgeon against the very hand that lit it. They cling to these hills, crowns of conviction forged in echo chambers, despising the patriarchy while perching atop its remnants. Change? It would require uprooting axioms, and that's a well uprooting few will stomach. So the bridge stays burned, its ashes fertilizing foreign soils. Men who still seek partnership look eastward, southward, to lands where tradition isn't a slur, but a scaffold. Countries where women proffer value as equals, respect wrapped in resilience, loyalty laced with levity. Legal tapestries there don't fray at a tearful testimony. They're woven tighter, safeguarding the vulnerable without villainizing the vigilant. Passports stamped, horizons chased. These men aren't fleeing, they're foraging, planting flags in fertile ground. It's pragmatic poetry. Why rebuild on fault lines when new earth awaits? In this embrace, solitude, men discover sovereignty. Not the hollow kind peddled by gurus, but the grounded sort that sprouts from soil turned by your own hands. We're not lonely, we're liberated, attuned to the symphony within. The world may clamor for connection on its terms, but we've rewritten the score. Forte where it serves, pianissimo where it soothes. And as new brotherhoods bud, perhaps in encrypted chats or reclaimed garages, maybe in the metaverse's uncharted maps, they'll bloom from better roots, voluntary, vetted, unbreakable. But let's linger here a moment because the weight of this warrants it. Consider the boy who once dreamed of scout fires, now a man scrolling feeds for fleeting fellowship. His story isn't unique, it's epidemic, a quiet pandemic of disconnection. We tell it not to wallow, but to witness, to honor the walkers who've paved this path with their persistence. Each step away is a statement, each solitary sunrise a sacrament. Society's sleight of hand, dismantling domains under diversity's banner, backfired spectacularly. Men, scattered like seeds, sprouted wild and wide, their tendrils threading through firewalls and frequencies. Rhetorically, it's a masterstroke of irony. The very division meant to domesticate unleashed the untamed. Women peering from their preserved perches, Girl Scouts marching on, women's leagues laughing loud, must now contend with a mosaic they can't mosaic back. Grains of sand, yes, impossible to grasp, eternal in their elusiveness. Men have adapted, as we always do, evolving from packs to pioneers, from echoed halls to inner sanctums. The peace we prize? It's profound. A reservoir replenished by refusal. No more noise pollution from needy narratives, just the clear chime of choice. The irreparability? It's not hyperbole, it's horizon scanning honesty. This rift, rent by relentless reimagining, requires epochs to mend. By the time equilibrium edges back, if it does, our generation will be footnotes in family trees, whispers in windswept yards. New alliances will arise, sure, men's circles in co working nooks, mentorships via mentorship apps, bonds bolted in blockchain backed communities. But the man woman accord, fractured beyond facile fixes, it hinges on Herculean shifts from women writ large, a humility harvest that's barren in this season. They're too entrenched, too enamored of their eminence, convinced men are mere means to their ends. These women, paragons of progress in their own eyes, will defend their dogma to the dregs. Its identity intertwined, disdain as doctrine, feminism as fortress. Unlearning that, it's like asking waves to recant the sea. So men pivot, passports in pocket, perspectives polished, overseas oases beckon, realms where reverence reigns, where partnership isn't parasitism, legal landscapes there level the field, words weighed against evidence, tears tallied but not triumphant. It's not escapism, it's enlightenment, a global garden where growth greets goodwill. Embracing solitude then becomes elevation. Men aren't marooned. We're monarchs of our own making. The lonely tag? A lazy libel from those who fear the fortress of one. We've honed the craft. Mornings meditative, evenings expansive, ambitions accelerate unencumbered, relationships, platonic or otherwise, chosen, not chanced. Peace as power. That's the punchline they missed. As we wade deeper into this waters, let's not rush the ripples. Storytelling demands savoring the scenes. The empty easy chair where a buddy once slumped, the silent stadium seats post game. These voids voice volumes, narrating a neglect that's now nudging renaissance. MWA isn't mourning, it's momentum, a march toward metrics of manhood redefined, self sourced, unapologetic. Let's keep walking this road together because the story doesn't end with the empty garage or the silent campfire. The real power of men walking away is not in what we left behind, but in what we're building right now in real time, while the old world still pretends it's in control. I want you to picture something with me. Imagine a man, let's call him Marcus, 34 years old, decent job, decent apartment, decent life on paper. 5 years ago, Marcus still believed the script. He had the girlfriend he was supposed to have, the friend group he was supposed to keep, the weekend plans that revolved around making sure everyone else was comfortable. He was the reliable one, the one who showed up early to help move couches, the one who always paid for the extra round because it's no big deal, the one who listened for hours while other people unloaded their drama, their fears, their endless lists of expectations. Marcus was the rock. And rocks, as we all know, get eroded one grain at a time. One Tuesday night, he came home from work, sat on his couch, and realized something that hit him like a freight train. He hadn't had a conversation in 6 months that wasn't about someone else's problems, someone else's feelings, or someone else's timeline for his life. His phone buzzed with notifications, group chats planning things he didn't want to do, a girlfriend texting paragraphs about why he wasn't emotionally available enough that week, a buddy asking him to cover a shift because you're single, man, you don't have anything going on. Marcus stared at the screen, then at the four walls around him, and for the first time in years, he felt something pure: clarity. He didn't rage. He didn't post a manifesto. He simply started deleting apps, contacts, obligations, excuses, one by one, like pulling leeches off his skin. The girlfriend got a calm final message. The group chats got archived. The favors stopped cold. And in the vacuum that followed, something wild happened. Marcus discovered silence wasn't empty. It was full, full of his own thoughts, full of his own energy, full of his own future. That's the moment millions of men are living right now, quietly, without announcement, without asking permission. They're not screaming on rooftops, they're just walking. And the world is only now starting to notice the footprints. Because here's the part the old guard still doesn't understand: solitude is not the same as loneliness. Loneliness is the ache of wanting connection and not getting it. Solitude is the power of no longer needing the connections that were slowly killing you. Marcus, and every man like him, didn't become a hermit. He became selective. He became deliberate. He became the architect instead of the building material. And that's when the new brotherhoods started forming. They don't look like the old ones. They don't meet in oak paneled lodges or on manicured baseball diamonds. They meet in Discord servers at 2 a.m. when a guy in Australia is finishing his day and a guy in Texas is just starting his workout. They meet on private forums where real names are optional, but real talk is mandatory. They meet on fishing boats at dawn, in jujitsu gyms that still smell like sweat and honesty, in cigar lounges that somehow survive the cultural purge. These new spaces have no signage, no membership committee, no rainbow flags, or corporate sponsors. You don't get invited. You earn your way in by showing up as a man who has already done the hard work on himself. I want you to feel the difference. Old brotherhood. Hey man, you coming to the barbecue? Everyone's bringing their girlfriends. Kids are running around. Hope that's cool. New brotherhood. Range opens at 0700. Bring your own ammo. We'll talk after we shoot. Old brotherhood. Bro, you have to come out tonight. It won't be the same without you. New brotherhood. I'll be at the gym at 5:30. Doors unlocked if you show up. There's no begging, no guilt trips, no emotional hostage taking. You show up or you don't. Your absence doesn't ruin anyone's night, and your presence isn't taken for granted. That's the new code. and it's spreading like wildfire because it works. Let me tell you about a private group I know. Nothing flashy, no branding, no merch. Just 187 men from 17 countries, average age 38, combined net worth north of 9 figures. They share market intel, real estate deals, workout protocols, custody battle war stories, and book recommendations. They've flown across oceans to stand in courtrooms next to brothers they'd never met in person. They've wired 5 figure sums with nothing more than pay it forward when you can. No leaders, no hierarchy, just a standard, add value or get quietly removed. That room is healthier, wealthier, and more tightly bonded than any country club or fraternity I've ever seen. And it exists because the old world made it impossible for those men to breathe anywhere else. This is what society never saw coming. They thought if they took away the Boy Scouts, the men's clubs, the single sex colleges, the bars with the men only sign in the window, that men would just wander around confused and eventually beg to be let back into the new mixed spaces on everybody else's terms. Like they thought isolation would break us. They were wrong. Isolation didn't break us, it refined us. Like carbon under pressure, the loneliness they tried to force on us is turning into diamonds, and those diamonds are sharp. We're sharper with our time now. We don't waste evenings on people who drain us. We're sharper with our money. We don't finance lifestyles that don't belong to us. We're sharper with our boundaries. We don't explain anymore. We just enforce. And we're sharper with our purpose. When the noise finally stops, a man can hear the signal. And the signal has been the same for centuries: build, protect, improve, conquer, repeat. That's why the passport game isn't running away. It's running toward it. Men aren't leaving because they hate their countries. They're leaving because they finally love themselves enough to stop volunteering for missions that end in ambush. When a man realizes his peace is non negotiable, borders become suggestions. When he realizes his legacy is more important than his reputation, oceans become speed bumps. I've watched men in their 40s, men who spent 2 decades grinding in systems that hated them, sell everything, learn a new language in 6 months, and move to places where a handshake still means something. I've seen them marry women who greet them at the door with a smile instead of a spreadsheet of complaints. I've seen them become fathers to children who will never have to unlearn the poison we were force fed. And every single one of them says the same thing: I didn't know life could feel this light. That's the secret they don't want you to discover. Peace isn't boring. Peace is rocket fuel. When you stop bleeding energy into black holes, toxic relationships, performative friendships, social media validation, endless dating apps, you suddenly have surplus. Surplus time, surplus focus, surplus testosterone, surplus cash. And a man with surplus builds things. He builds businesses. He builds his body. He builds a legacy that will outlive him by centuries. The women who spent years telling men, we don't need you, are now writing think pieces wondering where all the good men went. The universities that purged male spaces are now wondering why male enrollment is in free fall. The corporations that instituted diversity training to shame men into compliance are now wondering why their best engineers are quietly retiring at 45 to homestead in Idaho. We didn't disappear. We relocated. We relocated our attention. We relocated our loyalty. We relocated our future. And the beauty of it, you can't guilt trip a man who no longer seeks your approval. You can't shame a man who no longer fears being called lonely. You can't control a man whose peace is his highest priority. That's the ultimate red pill. Not hate, not bitterness, not even anger anymore. Just clarity, cold, clean, liberating clarity. The damage, as I said earlier, is generational. The trust is gone. The social contract is shredded, and no amount of "where have all the good men gone" articles will glue it back together. That contract can only be rewritten on new terms, in new places, with new people, or not at all. And most men, they've already made their choice. They choose themselves. They choose peace. They choose the kind of brotherhood that has to be earned, not inherited. They choose solitude over subjugation. They choose building over begging. They choose walking away and never looking back. So when you see a man who seems too quiet these days, understand he's not broken. He's busy. When you see a man who no longer jumps at every invitation, understand he's protecting something sacred. When you see a man whose circle got real small, understand it didn't shrink, it got refined. And when you see a man book a one-way flight with a smile on his face, understand something profound just happened. He finally graduated. He graduated from a system that taught him his value was in how much he could sacrifice. He graduated to a life where his value is in how much he refuses to give away. That's men walking away, not a movement, not a moment, a graduation. Class is dismissed. The first thing you notice when a man truly starts walking away is how quiet the world gets. Not empty quiet, not depressing quiet, the kind of quiet that happens right after a thunderstorm passes and the air feels electrically clean. The kind of quiet that lets you hear your own pulse again. That quiet is addictive. Once a man tastes it, he will move mountains to keep it. Let me tell you about Ryan. 31 years old, former Marine, spent 8 years in the Corps, did 2 combat tours, came home with a chest full of ribbons and a head full of noise. When he got out, he did what good Marines do. He tried to integrate, got a corporate security job, bought the pickup truck, found a pretty girl who said all the right patriotic things at the beginning. He told himself this was the reward, this was the life he'd earned. 3 years in, the girl was gone. Took the dog, half the furniture, and a chunk of his savings in temporary support while she found herself. The corporate job started sending him to mandatory training sessions titled things like Unpacking Your Privilege and Creating Psychological Safety for Marginalized Voices. His buddies from the unit were scattered across the country, most of them on their second or third divorce, drinking too much and pretending they were fine. Ryan would sit in his apartment at night, scrolling through old deployment photos, wondering why coming home felt harder than the war ever did. Then one random Thursday, he did something small that changed everything. He turned his phone off for 24 hours. No calls, no texts, no social media, no dating apps, just silence. He went to the range alone, shot 500 rounds, cleaned his rifle on the tailgate while the sun went down, and ate a steak he grilled in the parking lot. When he turned the phone back on the next morning, there were 47 missed messages, mostly guilt trips, demands, and people wanting something from him. For the first time in years, Ryan laughed out loud. Not a polite chuckle, a full from the gut laugh that scared a flock of crows out of the trees. That was the day Ryan graduated. Within 6 months, he had sold the truck, stored the furniture, and bought a one-way ticket to Southeast Asia. He landed with a backpack, 10 grand in crypto, and zero obligations. He spent the first month doing nothing but training Muay Thai, eating street food, and sleeping 12 hours a night. The noise in his head, the one that had been screaming since Ramadi, went quiet, not gone, just manageable. Like a radio turned down from 10 to 2, he met a girl 6 months in, not on an app, not at a bar, just a local teacher who smiled at him while he was buying mangoes. She didn't speak much English. He didn't speak much of her language. They communicated in gestures, laughter, and respect. She cooked for him without asking for a Venmo request afterward. When he fixed her father's motorcycle, the old man hugged him like a son. No lectures about toxic masculinity, no 5 hour discussions about his emotional availability, just human beings treating each other like human beings. Ryan messaged me one night from a rooftop in Chiang Mai. All he wrote was, "Bro, I forgot what air was supposed to feel like in my lungs." That's happening thousands of times right now. Quietly, no press releases, no TED Talks, just men waking up, looking around, realizing the game was rigged, and calmly folding their cards. And the craziest part? The more men walk, the stronger the pull becomes for the ones still standing in the burning building, wondering why it's getting hot. I want you to think about the mathematics of peace for a second, real mathematics. When you remove one energy vampire relationship from your life, you don't get back 10% of your energy. You get back 60 to 80% because the mental overhead of managing that person was eating 5 times more RAM than you realized. When you remove obligatory friendships, The guys who only call when they need help moving or bailing out of a bad decision. You don't free up a couple hours a month. You free up dozens of hours of second guessing, guilt, and performative loyalty. When you stop dating in a market where 80% of the profiles say, I don't need a man, but here are 47 requirements if you want to apply, you don't just stop wasting Saturday nights. You stop wasting years of your life on probationary relationships that were doomed the moment you said hello. Compound that over 5, 10, 15 areas of life, and you're not looking at incremental improvement. You're looking at a complete system overhaul. A man who reclaimed 70% of the energy he was hemorrhaging suddenly operates like a different species. That's why you're seeing guys in their 30s and 40s who look 10 years younger than their peers who stayed plugged in. That's why you're seeing bank accounts balloon, deadlift PRs skyrocket, passports fill up with stamps, and smiles that don't look forced for the first time in decades. Peace is the ultimate performance enhancing drug, and the supply is infinite if you're willing to cut the cords. Now, I want to slow down here and talk directly to the guy who's watching this while sitting in his truck in the parking lot after work, afraid to go inside his own house because he knows what's waiting for him. Hi, brother, I see you. I know what it feels like to dread walking through your own front door. I know what it's like to flinch when your phone buzzes because 9 times out of 10, it's a problem you didn't create but are expected to solve. I know what it's like to lie awake at 3 a.m doing mental math about how many years until the kid graduates or the mortgage is paid off or the alimony clock runs out so you can finally breathe. You think you're trapped. You think you're the only one carrying this weight. You're not. There are millions of us who have carried that same pack. Some of us put it down last week. Some of us are putting it down right now as they watch this video. And every single one of us wishes we had done it sooner. You are not a bad man for wanting peace. You are not a weak man for refusing to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. You are not a failure for realizing the juice isn't worth the squeeze anymore. You are a man who is waking up. And waking up is painful. It's supposed to be. Muscle grows when it tears. Steel is forged in fire. The pain you're feeling right now isn't punishment, it's birth. The life you want is on the other side of a decision you've been afraid to make. Make it. Start small if you have to. One boundary today, one no this week, one less obligation this month. Stack enough of those, and one day you'll look up and realize the prison door was never locked. You just stopped walking toward the exit because someone convinced you freedom was selfish. Selfish is staying in a war zone and calling it loyalty. Selfish is teaching your son that a man's job is to absorb unlimited damage with a smile. Selfish is watching your life force drain away while telling yourself this is what good men do. Good men protect their peace the same way they protect their family, with ferocity and without apology. The moment you decide your peace is non negotiable, the entire game changes. People who were comfortable using you suddenly have to find a new host. People who took you for granted suddenly have to bring value or watch you disappear. And people who never saw you clearly suddenly realize you were never the background character in their story. You were the main character in yours. And you just took the pen back. That's when the magic happens. That's when the new brotherhood finds you. Not because you went looking for it, but because you finally became the kind of man other high value men recognize from across a room. Calm, grounded, unapologetic, dangerous, in the way a sleeping wolf is dangerous, not because he's hunting, but because he no longer fears being hunted. I want you to close your eyes for 10 seconds and imagine something with me. Imagine it's 5 years from today. You wake up in a bed you own, in a place you chose, surrounded by silence you earned. Your body is strong because you trained it for you, not to impress someone who never noticed. Your bank account is growing because every dollar goes to your future, not someone else's lifestyle. Your phone has 200 contacts in it, but only 15 people you would answer at 3 a.m. And every one of them would do the same for you. You have a woman in your life, or maybe you don't. But either way, your happiness doesn't hinge on her mood or her ring finger. You look in the mirror and you recognize the man staring back. Not the performer, not the provider, not the fixer. You. Hold that image, burn it into your mind. Now open your eyes and ask yourself one question. What am I willing to endure for the next 5 years to make sure I never meet that man? Whatever your answer is, that's your price. Most men pay it in silence, one day at a time, until 20 years are gone and they're staring at a stranger in the mirror, wondering where their life went. A few men decide the price is too high. Those are the men walking away, and those are the men history will remember, not because they screamed the loudest, but because they simply refused to kneel. The path is open, the footprints are there, and all that's left is the next step and take it. The path keeps going long after the first step. Most men think walking away is a single dramatic moment. The day you delete the apps, cancel the plans, book the flight, or finally say the words, I'm done. But that's only the ignition. The real journey is what happens in the months and years after the engine turns over. When the road is quiet, the map is blank, and the only voice in the cab is your own. That's when the real work begins. That's when the real freedom is earned. Because here's what nobody tells you in the beginning: peace is not a destination you arrive at. Peace is a muscle you have to keep flexing every single day. The world will test it, old habits will test it, your own mind will test it. But every time you choose peace over chaos, the muscle gets stronger. And one day you realize the tests don't even register anymore. They bounce off like rain on a waxed hood. Let me paint you one more picture. This one is real. Names changed, but every detail is true. There's a man named Daniel, 42 years old, grew up in the Midwest, corn fed, church raised, the kind of guy who still says ma'am and sir without thinking. Married at 25 to his high school sweetheart, because that's what good boys do. 2 kids, nice house, 2 car payments, a golden retriever named Buddy. On the outside, the American dream in 4K. On the inside, Daniel was dying by inches. His wife stopped touching him years ago, not just sex, affection. A hug longer than 2 seconds was too much. Conversations were 90% logistics and 10% criticism. The kids were growing up watching their father apologize for breathing too loud. Daniel worked 60-hour weeks to keep the lifestyle running, came home, cooked dinner half the nights, did the laundry, coached Little League, and still got told he wasn't doing enough around here. He gained 40 pounds, started blood pressure meds at 38, slept 4 hours a night because the anxiety was a live wire in his chest. One Sunday morning, he woke up at 5 a.m. with chest pain. Thought it was the big one. Drove himself to the ER because he didn't want to wake anybody. Sat in the waiting room for 6 hours while they ran tests. Diagnosis, panic attack. The doctor handed him a script for Xanax and said, "You need to reduce stress, Mr. Thompson." Reduce stress. Like it was a dial he could turn? On the drive home, he pulled over on a gravel road, turned the truck off, and cried for the first time since he was 9 years old. Not pretty crying, the ugly, choking kind that rips your throat raw. When it was over, he looked at himself in the rearview mirror and said out loud, "I'm not dying for this." 6 months later, the divorce was final. She kept the house, the dog, most of the savings, and a child support order that made his eyes water when he read it. He moved into a 1-bedroom apartment with an air mattress and a card table. His mother called him selfish. His pastor called him a coward. His ex-wife told the kids he chose to leave. Daniel didn't argue. He just kept walking. Year 1 was brutal. He worked 2 jobs, lived on rice and chicken, paid the support, saw his kids every other weekend in supervised visits because she claimed he was unstable. He trained jujitsu 3 nights a week until his body hurt less than his mind. He read every book he could find on boundaries, stoicism, finance, frame. He cried in his truck some more nights. He wanted to quit every single day, but he didn't. Year 2, he got promoted, paid off the last credit card, started putting $1,000 a month into crypto and index funds. His body changed. The dad bod melted off. Shoulders got wide again. Eyes got clear. Year 3, he bought a small house cash. No mortgage, no wife, no golden retriever, just silence when he walked through the door. He stood in the empty living room the day he got the keys and laughed until he couldn't breathe. Not because it was fancy, it was 1,100 square feet and needed paint. He laughed because it was his, paid for with money he earned in a life he chose. Year 4, he met a woman in Colombia while on a solo trip. She was 33, no kids, ran her own little coffee farm, laughed like sunlight. They spoke in broken Spanish and Google Translate for 3 months before he brought her to the States on a fiance visa. She moved into the little house with the peeling paint and turned the backyard into a garden. They got married in the courthouse with 10 friends and a $200 budget. Best day of his life. Last month, Daniel sent me a photo. He's 47 now, standing on his porch at sunrise, shirtless, holding a cup of coffee his wife just handed him. The kids, now teenagers, were inside asleep after a weekend with dad. His shoulders are wider than they were at 25. His eyes are calm. The smile on his face is the kind you can't fake. The caption he wrote under the photo was only 5 words. I paid the price. Worth it. That's the other side of walking away. Not the fantasy version sold in 2-minute TikToks. The real version, the one that costs something, the one that leaves scars, the one that makes you a villain in rooms you used to call home, and the one that gives you a life you never have to escape from again. There are millions of Daniels out there right now. Some are still in year 0, sitting in their trucks crying. Some are in year 1, eating rice and feeling the weight. Some are in year 5, standing on porches they own, breathing air that finally belongs to them. Every single one of them will tell you the same thing. The price is high, but staying would have cost more. So if you're still on the fence, still doing the mental math, still telling yourself maybe later, let me leave you with this. Time is the only currency you can't earn back. Every day you spend in a war you didn't start is a day you'll never get to live in the peace you deserve. The door is open. The path is lit by the footsteps of every man who decided his future was worth more than his comfort. All that's left is you. I take the step. Now, I want to hear from you. What part of this hit you the hardest? Are you already walking, still thinking about it? Or did something in these stories just flip a switch? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and the community here answers faster than I ever could. Like the video if it spoke to you. Don't forget to subscribe if you're ready for more truth like this. And if this resonated, share it with one man who needs to hear he's not crazy for choosing peace. All roads lead to MWA, men walking away. Cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.